Okay, we are live. Hi, Dr. Nicole.
Hello, Sandra, كيفك?
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing fine.
دكتور يعني في معنى أول شيء thank you for being with us tonight و thank you for tackling such an important topic that is very needed in our lives. ما في حدا ما بيقطع بstruggles وما في حدا منا إلا ما بيسأل حاله am I strong enough? Will I be able to face the next struggle? How can I cope better بالأشياء اللي بتصير معنا بالحياة، المفاجآت اللي بتخربط لنا حياتنا. سو هيدا موضوع بدق مش بس باللبنانية، يعني whoever is watching us اليوم، حتى من برات لبنان، من الدول العربية، من برات المنطقة، حتى كلنا بنقطع بحياتنا بمواقف صعبة، ولازم نكون يعني كيف نقدر نتخطيها أو كيف نقدر ما تترك أثر عنا عميق. هيدول كلهم أسئلة إلك الليلة. So thank you so much for doing this, for being with us. تساعدينا إنه نتثقف أكتر ونفهم حالنا أكتر تنقدر to face these struggles in a better way. رح أتركك هلأ تعرفي عن حالك هيك عروق وتبلشي بالموضوع. أنا بس I just want to do a quick just reminder لأنه معنا ناس جداد كمان على البلاتفورم على سيرة. So مثل ما صرتوا تعرفوا سيرة as a platform شغلتها the focus of سيرة is mental health، وأهم شيء إنه we're aiming to normalize and democratize mental health. So منبسط الستراجلز اللي بنعيشهم كل يوم، نحكي بكل هالمشاكل، من مشاكل بالكابل، مشاكل بالبارنتينج، من مشاكل يعني كاندفيدجوالز، وكمان بالشغل. وكمان يعني اليوم رح تقضوا معنا مع دكتور نيكول ساعة ونص in a round table. بهالراوند تيبل رح نتعلم أكتر عن resilience, how to cultivate resilience. وعنا تقريبا 40 minutes وين نحن رح نكون عم نسجل we are broadcasting live، عم تحضرونا أنتوا هلأ لايف، وفيكم تتواصلوا معنا through questions. رح تكون very interactive. حتى دكتور نيكول عندها أسئلة لإلكم كمان، بتمنى أنكم تجاوبونا. Please بهال 40 minutes لأنه عم نسجل make sure to ask your questions anonymously تما يبين اسمكم بالريكوردينج، so تتحافظوا على سرية هويتكم. إذا بتحبوا ask your questions anonymously عندكم هالأوبشن. so قدامكم على الأب ببين وقت بدكم تسألوا سؤال بالQ&A، عندكم section Q&A under this round table. You can ask your question and you can ask it anonymously. كمان من بعد هال 40 minutes رح ننقل مع دكتور نيكول على a virtual room، أوضة بنجتمع فيها very easy. كيف تنقلوا رح نعلمكم كيف. بنلتقي كلنا بهالأوضة، ما بنسجل. it's not recorded, very private, it's a safe space وين كمان فيكم تسألونا أسئلتكم anonymously إذا بتحبوا تفصحوا عن هويتكم، أو تطلعوا معنا حتى على الكاميرا وعلى الميكروفون نسمعكم ونقشعكم وتشاركونا خبرتكم، والكل يشارك خبرته تنقدر نساعد بعض، لأنه نحن بنآمن بقوة الجماعة وإنه منا لحالنا. هيدي أول طريقة للواحد يشفى من مشاكله. Dr. Nicole, that's all on my يعني from my end. Please introduce yourself again يعني we are looking forward لهالساعة ونص معك we'll have a lot of questions for you. So go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Sandra, على الانترودكشن و thank you for having me. I was very excited إنك طرحتي هيدا التوبيك لأنه it is a hot topic. It has been for quite some time، وخصوصا يعني مثل ما بنعرف as you said الحياة sometimes throws curveballs at us, and what that means is it's unpredictable and sometimes this can throw us off guard, and it's important for us to learn about emotional resilience. And hopefully اليوم يعني حنركز على هيدا التوبيك، نحكي أكتر شو هو أول شيء هالريزيلينس وكيف نقدر ننمي هيدا الشيء. بالنسبة لإلي يعني let me introduce myself. I don't know إذا عندنا newcomers مثل ما قلتي, but this is the second time for me to give one of these talks على سيرة. I'm very happy to do so because I am a strong mental health advocate, so كتير بحب يعني to talk about mental health related topics, raise awareness, normalize it. You know, منه شيء غلط نحكي عن صحتنا النفسية، بالعكس يعني we should be doing this. And كمان I love the idea of creating an opportunity للعالم كمان تسأل أسئلة because we all think about our own mental health or other people's mental health. So I'm sure everyone here today probably has a few questions. وكمان الطريقة اللي معمولة السيرة والبلاتفورم a way to create safety. So please يعني للجميع اللي عم يسمعنا اليوم, take this opportunity to ask me questions anonymously, or if you want, when we go to the private rooms, you're welcome, Kamena, to turn on your video camera and interact live with us. You know, we would love for you to do that. So شوي عن حالي, أنا موجودة بأمريكا, so this is why it's daytime. عندي, it's quite early in the morning. I'm located in Washington, so it's about 10:30 a.m. home, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been practicing for over 10 years now. With areas of expertise لإلي هن anxiety, relationships وtrauma. وكتير في أشخاص بيسألوني إنه what's your approach in therapy? And I like to identify as an integrative therapist, which means إنه I draw on different approaches. So ما بعتقد إنه في one size fits all. كل شخص أكيد has their story to tell. I don't believe that there's only one approach in therapy that works. So I tend to draw on different approaches depending on what I think suits my client best. وللأشخاص اللي بيحبوا يعرفوا شوي أكتر عني, they can probably check out my Instagram profile page or my website. So my website is meadowspath.com, and my Instagram link is meadows_therapy. So that's a bit about me. So let's get started for today, because we do have quite a bit on the agenda. So اليوم مثل ما ذكرت Sandra, my style is to kind of get the audience to interact a little bit with me. So we are going to test your knowledge. ما تخافوا, ما في يعني علامات, none of that, but more of true or false statements about resilience. حنحكي أكيد عن what is emotional resilience. You're probably going to hear me أمرار رح استخدم كلمة emotional resilience أو psychological resilience أو inner strength or stress resilience. All of those things are synonymous. Okay, they all mean the same thing. حنحكي عن شو هو الأشياء اللي بيأثر على resilience, what influences it, شو هن characteristics of people that are resilient, and most importantly, we're going to talk about how we can develop our resilience. So let's begin with testing our knowledge. So I think Sandra, أنت already عندك شوية statements بعتلك إياهم. So all I want you guys to do is look at the poll section and answer either true or false. So هيدا أول statement. People who are resilient experience less distress, grief, or anxiety. True or false?
So قدامكم على الاب رح يبين عندكم questions وعندكم polls. So chat, questions و polls. إذا بتكبسوا على poll بيبينوا الأسئلة اللي عم تسألنا إياهم دكتور نيكول. So if you can please answer هيك we can get an idea كمان إذا يعني what do you think and شو perception تبعكم.
So I'm just going to allow a few more seconds for this. Again, if you guys don't know the answer, that's totally fine. Just give it a guess. And Sandra, I'll just wait for you to let me know once you have the majority of the responses in.
Okay, بلش جينا. False. الأكترية false.
Okay, as in for all of them, like they answered false?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and I'll share the answers. Yeah, مازالك ولا بدك تعطي شوية وقت بعد؟
إيه بركي بنعطي دقيقة بس
Sure, إيه.
أوكي. لا لأنه صار عنا أوكي 50-50.
Yeah. Okay, thank you guys for participating. I'm going to go ahead and share the answers with you. Again, not to worry if you got it right or wrong. Again, this is just for you to test your own knowledge, and hopefully by today you'll learn more. Okay, so people who are resilient experience less distress, grief, or anxiety. It's false. Actually, people who are resilient كمان هن بيحسوا بمشاعر مش حلوة كتير مثل الزعل والغضب والanxiety. So بيمرقوا بهول feelings as well. However, how they respond to these emotions is what is different. This is what makes one person resilient or not. It's how we respond to our feelings. The other thing is هيدي الستيتمنت يمكن أنا خربطكم شوي بكلمة anxiety, because people who are emotionally resilient عادة they are protected from developing anxiety disorders or depression. Okay, so yes, بيحسوا بمشاعر مثلنا مثل باقي العالم عادي, but they are protected from developing any serious mental illness. That's the difference. Secondly, people are capable of learning skills to become more resilient. The answer is true. And this is why we're here today, because yes, there is hope and we can learn skills for that.
100%.
And what's that, Sandra?
أقول 100% جواب true.
Okay, amazing, great, good to hear that. And then so كمان شغلة to know and know resilience is quite common, and many people are capable of learning it. Resilience can be present from birth. شو جاوب الماجورتي لهيدا الشيء؟
انقسموا.
Yeah.
50.
It is a tricky one, you know, I have to admit it's very tricky, but yes, resilience can be present from birth. I'll talk more about this later today. But you know, you have a hint there. There is something about our genetic predisposition. وآخر statement, being resilient is about figuring things out on our own. False. You know, being resilient is actually being okay with asking for help, being okay with having a support system around us, you know, receiving help from family, friends, professional, because we're social creatures at the end of the day. We can't do things on our own. So بس لوضح هيدا الشيء لأنه أمرار في عالم عندهم misconception إنه being resilient is just about, you know, being yourself, being tough, being strong, ما نطلب مساعدة من حدا. That's not what resilience is. بالعكس, it's about being comfortable with being vulnerable. All right, so already حكينا شوي عن briefly شو هو resilience, بس we're gonna dive in deeper ونحكي عن كدefinition أساساً شو هي. It's our ability to adapt to stressful situations or crisis. أكيد a stressful situation could be anything from having an interaction with your boss at work that upsets you. This could be a stressful situation, to forgetting to pick up one of the kids from school and you get stressed out about that, to a crisis such as أكيد the Beirut انفجار, right? So this is a crisis, this is something major. أو مثلا the pandemic itself could be considered a crisis. So whatever it is, in كان شيء minor أو in كان شيء more catastrophic or major, resilience is our ability to adapt to this situation. And it is our strength to bounce back from adversity. So مثل ما بنعرف الحياة مثل ما ذكرت أول شيء, sometimes it throws curveballs at us. في اشياء ما بنقدر نحن نتوقعها وبتصير بالحياة, وهيدي الاشياء it can definitely shake us and affect us. But resilience is how we cope with that, how we bounce back. Just a fun fact actually, كلمة resilience هي بتجي from a Latin root word اسمها resilio. هي كلمة resilio يعني to bounce back. This is why إذا تقروا اشياء online عن resilience كتير امرار بيستخدموا هيدي the idea of bouncing back. So an essential part of resilience is this idea of being flexible. As I said, life is unpredictable, life is hard. If we don't have this trait of flexibility, we're probably going to find life extremely difficult. So finding a way to build on this characteristic of flexibility كتير شغلة أساسية. يعني ما في شد على هيدا الموضوع أكتر, بس أكيد حنحكي أكتر how we develop this flexibility. But I want you to think of it as the core ingredient when you're baking a cake. So to have this as a main thing.
flexibility هون نيكول إذا فيك تشرحي لنا شوي. flexibility يعني مش يعني نتوقع إنه رح يصير أشياء مش منيحة, أو إنه إذا صار أشياء مش منيحة نقدر نتماشى معها. شو بتقصدي فيها؟
Yeah, that's actually a good question, Sandra. Actually, yes, it's the way that you explained it, the second part. نقدر نحن نتماشى معها. So to ride with the wave. It's this idea of we need to be expecting that life is going to be hard, life is going to be tough, life is going to be unpredictable. For those of us who haven't realized that by now, we really seriously need a reality check. But I think the pandemic was a wake-up call لنا هالشيء. So it's knowing that في اشياء حتكون خارج سيطرتنا, and it's this idea of let me ride the wave, let me go with it, whatever comes my way, let me face it. وهيدي idea of flexibility أوقات أنا بفكر فيها مثل it's like a muscle. You know, when you first go to the gym, you might not be very fit and toned, and you have to really work on certain core muscles so that بيصير عندك هالflexibility. So بنفس الطريقة حيكون في أشياء معينة حنحكي عنها اليوم بتخلينا تنمرن هيدا الflexibility اللي عم نحكي عنه. So last thing I want to add to that is while some people أكيد can be crushed by these sudden changes in life, highly resilient individuals are able to adapt and thrive. And some people think of, now I don't know how much I agree with this, but I'm just going to share it with you guys anyways. And some people think that the opposite of resilience is fragility. أنا كلمة fragility كتير بتذكرني بإزازة. You know how when you buy something and it's delicate, بيحطوا ال red tape around it and they say it's fragile, handle with care. And it makes me feel like something can easily be broken. So I don't really like this idea that the opposite of resilience is fragility, just because in my mind, I think of it as, what are they trying to say? That the opposite of being resilient is being, broken. So أنا personally ما بحب هيدي comparison. I'd be curious to know what other people think is the opposite of resilience, just for conversation, discussion. But yeah, feel free to write that in the chat if you want, and we can, discuss it later. So more on resilience, it's not about winning the battle. في أشياء حتصير ما حنقدر نحن to find a solution right then and there. Like we said, it's about riding it, going with the motion. It's about sitting with the feelings, sitting with the distress, knowing إنه ما حنقدر بلحظتها نلاقي solution. So again, I'll just give an example of the pandemic. أول ما طلعت الخبرية وما عرفنا شو بدنا نعمل, we all, of course, were feeling hopeless and we were in despair. How long is this going to last? Is it going to be days, weeks, months, years? We really have to learn to sit with this uncertainty. And for a lot of us, it actually got easier with time, because with time كمان قدرنا نحصل على answers and we sat with the distress. So we didn't necessarily find a solution then and there, بس نحن تأقلمنا. So again, this idea of we adapt to our circumstances. So resilience is the strength to power through the storm and still keep the sail steady. And another way to think of resilience is that it's temporary. These adversities are not long-lasting forever. Pain and suffering is a part of life. نحن ما بنقدر نتهرب من هيدا الشيء. So when these things happen, it's best for us to find ways to sit with them, acknowledge them, accept them, and find a way to deal with those emotions rather than trying to push it away. ما بعرف إذا أعطيت هيدا الإكزامبل المرة الماضية, بس I often like to give it, so I may have mentioned it before, but when feelings come up for us, I like to imagine it as a beach ball. If we try to push it down, it's only going to try to come back up, right? إذا أنت واقفة بالمي وعم تجربي تحط الطابة تحت المي, it's going to bounce back up. Same thing with feelings. If we try to really push them aside, they're only going to come back stronger. They're only going to feel more intense. So we want to find ways to relate to our feelings in a healthy way. إن كنا زعلانين أو we're experiencing stress, let's try not to push those feelings away. Let's not ignore it. Let's allow it to be there and fill up the room.
نيكول، هون كمان
Hey.
سؤال. إذا فيك to describe، لأنه كتير منا كمان ربينا إنه feelings، يعني أوكي بنعرف إنه زعلنا، بس بدنا نقطع المرحلة بسرعة. يمكن إذا فيك بس to describe شو يعني إنه sit with the feeling، بس تقولي لنا sit with the feeling. what does it mean? does it mean نوقف وناخد وقتنا تنفكر، ولا نحس؟ يعني مش واضحة كمان لإلنا.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sandra. Thank you for asking. So it's a combination of some of those things. Partly it means إنه to slow down, إنه نحس بهالمشاعر وما نتهرب منها, to not feel it. يعني في أمرار عالم بيلجأوا للكحول أو للمخدرات because they don't want to feel this ugly feeling. إن كانوا زعلانين or whatever, they just want to numb it. They don't want to feel it. طبعاً هول الأشياء can only make our problems worse. So to sit with a feeling means to actually slow down, try to feel and identify. طب أنا شو عم بحس? Sometimes we don't label our emotions appropriately. Sometimes يمكن نحن نقول I'm so angry, but maybe behind the anger is sadness. Maybe there's grief. Maybe there's so many other feelings. So we want to identify what is it really that we're feeling? Why are we feeling that way? What came up for us? What was triggered? Were we reminded of something from our past? Sometimes we find ourselves reacting in situations and we don't understand why. Examining that further could be that something that someone said reminded us of someone in our life that acts the same way, that makes us angry, for whatever reason. So as you said, Sandra, it is about slowing down, identifying the feeling, trying to ask ourselves why we feel that way, and asking ourselves, how do we want to respond to this emotion? So فكرة إنه slowing down rather than acting impulsively and quickly to get rid of that feeling. So I hope I answered that question. Okay, حبيت حط هيدا الموديل. There are so many models out there about stress and resilience, but I don't want this to be, a university style lecture class. So ما كان بدي to overwhelm you with theories وكل هالأخبار. بس حبيت to share at least one thing of how stress and resilience are connected. So بهيدا الموديل فينا نشوف إنه لما يكون في traumatic event, whether this is a death, bereavement, unemployment, poverty, شو ما كانت تكون الشغلة, natural disaster, this can trigger our fight or flight response system, which is our built-in system in the brain اللي هو بيخلينا to react in case we see perceived stress. So when the brain goes into fight, flight, or flight, freeze, or fight response, هون مختصرينها to fight or flight, يلي بيصير هو إنه يا نحن بنحس بدنا to face a situation, to confront it ونحارب هيدا الشيء, يا بدنا to fly away from it, so منهرب منها, أو بلحظتها we freeze. So this is a very normal biological reaction that happens in our body. بنفس الوقت لما هالاشياء عم بتصير, the body is also releasing an enormous amount of cortisol اللي هي الستريس هرمون. كترة الكورتيزول بالجسم هي اللي ممكن تسبب كمان مشاكل صحية. So a person's immune system can become compromised, meaning that they can become sick more easily, meaning that they feel weak, they feel fatigue, كل هالاشياء. So having this reaction is normal. Having it prolonged أو chronic ما بتوقف هالسيستم, هون بتسبب بشكل. Okay? لما يصير عنا هال-experience of stress, أكيد نحن we want to respond to the stress. This is where we see the third part اللي هي stress management. People can either respond in a healthy way to the stress. For example, هون كاتبين by communicating, seeking professional guidance, managing our emotions, getting emotional support. كل هالأشياء we consider it healthy. And if we do it in this way, بنكون عم ننمي our emotional resilience. So if we adopt healthy coping strategies consistently, this is how we expand our repertoire of emotional resilience. So بيكون عنا هال inner strength and better flexibility and so on in life. إذا بهالحال we do not respond to stress in a healthy way, we would be compromising our resilience. This is really how the model is kind of explained, and to break it down. حسيتك عندك سؤال ماني مأكدة.
يعني هون نيكول عم نحكي على اشياء كأنه عطيتينا بالاكزامبل، يمكن اشياء بتصير يعني محدودة بالوقت. اوكي، عشنا ما بعرف انفجار بيروت او خسرنا مصرياتنا، بس انه اشياء شوي انه بتجي بفترة زمنية يمكن محدودة. وعنا اشياء بحياتنا مرات بتصير يلي هي بتأثر على حياتنا كل الوقت. إذا عنا كرونيك ديزيز، صار عنا سخونة، حدا من أهلنا أو اللي بنهتم فيهم ساخن أو منه منيح، إجينا child was some difficult، يعني ما بيعود الإيفنت محصور، بصير عم يمتد معنا كل حياتنا، كمان عم بيرافقنا، عم بيأثر علينا. هون هالسايكل كيف منعيشه؟
That's a great question. This is why ببعض الأمرار these people who have such circumstances نحن بنسميهم more at risk of developing mental health difficulties إذا ما عندهم the adequate support systems in place. These are the people that really have to be making sure إنه هيدي الثالث نقطة هون عن stress management. These are the people that need to be consistently doing things for their mental well-being and health. Otherwise هن حيكونوا very high risk إنه يكون عندهم difficulties themselves. أكيد having a chronic condition, having a child with a disability or neurodiverse child, neurodivergent, any of those things can be very difficult to deal with on a daily basis because أكيد في stress وهيدا الستريس حيتراكم. And if we're not dealing with it, again, we're back to this, situation. So really, Sandra, the key in all of this, whether it was a temporary situation oh, it was something more long-lasting. The idea is we need to find tools and ways to manage our stress. هيدا الشيء ما لازم يكون optional بالحياة إذا بدك. It's something that should be just like bread and butter. It's أساسي, you know, it's just the way it should be. So yeah, I hope I made that clear.
absolutely. كمان سؤال لإلك إنه نحن عادة أكترية الناس بنشوفها بتعلق يعني بالفلايت or fight or freeze، وفي ناس بتطول كمان يعني مثلا إذا عنا مشكلة نقول ما بدنا نواجهها we escape على قصص تانية. مرات بتلاقي إنه أوكي على فترة طويلة صار عنا behavior معين، بلشنا دخان يمكن أو بلشنا مثلا we are taking anxiety pills أو فجأة صرنا كتير عم نشتغل تما نفكر بغير قصص سو هون كمان شو فيك تقولي لنا يعني كيف بدنا ننقل من 2 ل 3 وليش لازم ننقل؟ لأن في ناس بتكفي حياتها وما بتعرف إنه عن جد هي علقانة بالتو.
صح. So this is why كمان I'm going to probably talk more about those things a bit later, but like you said, there are ways to regulate our response system اللي هي fight or flight response system لما تضلها constantly بهالstate of panic or survival mode إذا بدك. لأنه لو ضلت بهيدا situation, the body is just going to continue to think إنه it's under attack, you know, when actually it might not be under attack anymore. So yeah, we will talk more about that later, Sandra, عن شو هن strategies. Okay, so what influences resilience? First thing I'm going to talk about is أول نقطة أنا ذكرتها يمكن بالtest your knowledge. كنت قايلت لكم إنه resilience is something that you can have at birth. So this is really what the nature speaks to. Nature is everything that is biological, things that we are born with, that is our genetic predisposition. مش أشياء نحن تعلمناها. أشياء بالenvironment تعلمناها, we refer to it as nurture. Nature is the biology. So to some degree نحن بنلاقي إنه في أمرار an infant is naturally calm, naturally relaxed, somehow just always smiling, not very fussy. Other times we find that there are some children that are fussy, they cry easily, they might not sleep very well. And so we might refer to them as quote unquote fussy babies or irritable children. So what I'm trying to get at is في natural temperament الولد بيخلق فيه, which we don't know why is the case, but it's just genetics, that influences our resilience. تاني شغلة أكيد العمر بيلعب دور. Somebody that is young that doesn't have the cognitive capacity or experiences in life and so on might not be as resilient as somebody that is older that has lived through things. Exposure to trauma is a very important and أكيد sensitive topic. أكيد الشخص يلي قاطع بتراما خصوصاً بطفولته أو their teenage years, these people can be less resilient in the sense that يمكن عندهم مشاكل with regulating their emotions. They might also not perceive their environment as safe because of their trauma. So أكيد in this situation, these are the people that must be seeking support from professionals so that they can start their journey of healing, so that they can work through their traumas, because automatically being in situations where you might have experienced trauma as a child is going to make you more vulnerable simply because you didn't have the tools to learn how to deal with emotions. The last point is an interesting topic. So it used to be thought إنه في فرق بين الgenders on how they deal with resilience, or whether they have the resilience to the same level or degree. بس اللي actually more recently studies عم بتفرجي إنه what affects resilience is the societal and cultural factors. So هون عم نحكي عن, for instance, the transgender and gender non-conforming people, they might be less resilient because they do not have adequate support in some of their environments, depending on where they're from. They might feel the pressure from society or their culture, and they might feel the discrimination and so on. بهول situations, they might be more vulnerable and not have as much resilience. So again, just to clarify, most of the studies are showing that the differences in emotional resilience, it's not necessarily related to gender per se, but more of the society and cultural influences and reactions. Okay, Sandra, I want people to kind of engage with us here. So I'm going to throw this question out there. What are some characteristics that you guys think emotionally resilient people have? Already أنا حكيتكم عن وحدة أساسية اللي هي flexibility. What other things come to mind? What do you think are the characteristics that people have? So just feel free to share in the chat.
في حدا من الأودينس جاوبك على opposite of resilience, rigidity.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so because we talked about resilience being flexibility, yeah, could be rigidity in a way. I see that, could be. I'll give it more thought. Yeah.
تجاوبونا على السؤال بالQ&A وحطوا anonymous إذا ما بدكم يبين اسمكم please.
كمان بدي أوضح إنه I talked about trauma earlier. Going through a traumatic experience doesn't mean that you cannot learn to become emotionally resilient. By going through therapy and your own journey of healing, you can learn the tools and skills to become emotionally resilient. So هيدا ما بيعني إنه you cannot learn it later. And by the way, when this happens for some people, they will achieve something we call post-traumatic growth. يمكن في عالم سامع عن PTSD اللي هي Post Traumatic Stress Disorder اللي ممكن تكون a result of a traumatic experience. في أمرار بعد ال healing process في أشخاص they grow and they evolve. We call it post-traumatic growth, which is a really nice concept كمان. Yeah, بين شي معنا عم بيجاوبوا.
characteristics يلا نشوف.
هلا الكل على الجوجل. What are the characteristics? Kamen, what might help you to answer this question is to think of someone that you know in your life that you consider maybe to be emotionally resilient, and think about what personality traits or characteristics that they have.
They have the capacity to think rationally rather than emotionally.
Okay, what else?
Maturity.
Okay, anything else?
That's it. tricky question شوي لأنه إذا بتفكري إنه how do you define it? It's more in the behavior rather than a characteristic of the personality. يعني
Sure. Yeah, sure. Hey, كمان you can think of it in that way. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? What are the behaviors that they do? Okay, we'll allow a few more seconds. If we don't get any responses, totally fine. We'll just, we'll move on from there and I'll talk about this next section.
calm and calculated.
Oh. Okay.
Mindful.
That's it?
Mindful.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So some of you guys are touching on the same kind of idea, which is there's something about how they respond to feelings. You know, someone said rational, but not emotional. I would kind of correct that person to say a resilient person can learn to think more objectively, not just to be consumed with the problem that's happening right then and there, but to think more objectively and not to allow those emotions to consume them to the point that they can't see things clearly, if that makes sense. رح نحكي
بيجيني
فيهم إيه.
بس so وين ما بتكبيها بتجي واقفة أو وين ما بتكبيه بيجي واقف. Education and environment, those
مم.
affect hobbies.
مم.
Determined.
مهم. مهم.
High
What's that? Sorry, علق ساندرا.
experience.
Oops. What happened?
إيه عم
Yeah.
تسمعيني؟
إيه.
Determined, high tolerance, وآخر شيء experienced people.
Yeah. So determined is definitely on the list. And the way that I've termed it in this presentation is using the word perseverance. So رح نحكي مثل ما قلت بهيدا السكشن شو هن characteristics that these people tend to share. Oops, what did I do? Sorry, one moment. ما بعرف شو كبس. Okay, yeah. So firstly, they have a high capacity for their emotional awareness, and they have good emotional regulation skills and empathy towards others. So شو بيعني هالشي? It means that they understand what they are feeling, which is basically answering your question, Sandra, سألتيني a while back, what does it mean to sit with emotions and so on. So having a high emotional awareness, or sometimes people like to refer to it as EQ, so emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, these are all under the same concepts. It means that a person knows what they are feeling and why they are feeling that way. مش لأنه كوني فكانت, it's not like, oh, I don't know where this is happening or why, but there's a real understanding of why they feel that way. They understand the feelings of other people and they respond appropriately to others. So كمان, as we can see, there's a kind of a process here of slowing down to our feelings and not just immediately reacting to whatever it is that we feel. Also, the thing about emotionally resilient people, عم بقرا هون a quote كنت كاتبتها, I read it somewhere. It's that they believe that life happens for them, not to them. And I really like that idea. إنه life happens for us, مش إنه عم بيصير شيء towards me, because that mentality of it's happening to me sometimes بيخلق victimization mentality. So we just should be aware sometimes of how are we interpreting things around us. Oh, did you say? Sandra? Oops, what's happening here? Oops. Okay, I'll continue. Okay, شكله شوي عم بيعلم. Okay, so somebody talked about determination, and the word I've used here is perseverance, which in other words means it's our willingness to continue going even in the face of obstacles, trusting in the process and going with it. يعني مثل ما قلنا earlier, another analogy is thinking of riding the wave, going with it. Perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did. So again, this idea of keep going. Sometimes I like to think of the difference between discipline and motivation. Motivation is when we feel إنه بدنا الجلد يكون موجود قبل ما نعمل شغلة. So sometimes people will say, oh, I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to go to the gym, because they're searching for motivation. Versus discipline. Discipline is us being committed to it, irrespective of how we feel. So we wake up, whether we feel like we want to go to the gym or not, we still do it anyways لأنه أخذنا القرار to commit to it. Again, same idea of perseverance, discipline, determination. We continue going despite the obstacles. Internal locus of control is this idea that we are in control, or we are the masters of the ship that we are sailing. We are the captain. I take charge, not that, things are just happening to me. I said this quote earlier that emotionally resilient people believe that life happens for them, not to them. Somebody with an external locus of control believes that life happens to them, إنه كل شيء خارج سيطرتهم, and they can't have any say in how their life turns out to be. Versus someone that's emotionally resilient, they believe that they, rather than the outside forces, are in control of their own lives. They feel a greater sense of control, which كمان is related to less stress. So 3 things we covered already: emotional awareness and regulation, perseverance, internal locus of control. Next is optimism. كمان they tend to see positives in situations, and this can shift how they handle problems from the victim mentality to a more empowered one. And they practice positive self-talk. So instead of saying, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? This is unfair. Instead of being caught up in this story, they probably have a different narrative. And it sounds like, okay, صارت هالشغلة, I don't like it. يا ريت ما صارت, بس شو بقدر أعمل هلا? So they're thinking more of, what can I do? Again, this idea of internal locus of control. How can I make the most out of this situation? Social support, we already did a bit of a test your knowledge earlier. شغلة كتير كتير أساسية to feel supported by family, friends, كمان professionals if need be. But this idea of having social support is so important for us. Like I said, we're social creatures. We need each other. And they adopt healthy coping strategies, which is finding ways to self-soothe during times of stress. Whether it means اليوم رح طفي تليفوني لنص ساعة لأنه I'm sick of receiving so many phone calls, whether it means I'm going to take a walk outside so I can clear my mind, or I'm going to sleep another extra hour this weekend because I'm tired, it's been a long week. Any of those things are taking care of ourselves. So نحن بنسميهم self-soothing or healthy coping strategies. Anything that involves looking after yourself in a healthy way. Other characteristics is having a sense of humor. Like we said before, life happens. Sometimes unfortunate things happen, but if we can find the humor in them or laugh it off sometimes, it helps us to see things as less threatening and more of, okay, it's a challenge. But the idea of if we see it as a threat, منعظمها, versus if it's a challenge, we find a way to push through it. It helps us to become maybe more determined to get by it. Perspective. They learn from their mistakes. They understand that they're human beings as well. They're not going to be perfect. So instead of dwelling on ليه هيك أنا عملت, or why did I not succeed in this task, ليه ما أجاني هالpromotion, I did everything I possibly could, but my boss didn't see me, why is this, it's my fault. Instead of being, again, caught up in this, they go, okay, it is what it is. Here are the areas I can work on. I'm going to take the feedback. So they're open to feedback and, constructive feedback. And they learn from their mistakes and they find meaning in life's challenges. Spirituality, كمان super important. Being internally connected to one's spiritual side, كمان has been linked to stronger resilience. This idea of there's a God, there's a higher being, that has a plan for us or is going to take care of us. كمان puts one at ease. إنه okay, أنا عملت اللي علي, الباقي على الله. So that's all I can do. So this idea is also sometimes very soothing and helpful. In addition, of course, to prayers and things like this. I want to stress, it's not mandatory for people to be practicing rituals per se, because what's important here is that the person feels this connection internally. So for some people, they get this connection more with specific rituals, like going to a church or going to a mosque or praying a certain time of day. That works for some people. It doesn't necessarily work for others, and that's fine. But the idea being is that being internally connected can help tremendously with building this resilience repertoire. So I'm going to pause there for a second before we talk about how to develop resilience. Any questions, any comments, any concerns? I'm rushing through it because بدي انقل بعد شوي على the private rooms, so I apologize if I'm speaking a bit too quickly.
ما عنا أسئلة لهلا.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to kind of get through the next few slides بعدين ننقل على الأوضة. So how to develop resilience? Developing resilience is, firstly, we need to develop our self-awareness. So in other words, الوعي الذاتي, understanding, what do I feel? What is my body feeling? What is my body trying to tell me? ما بتصدق قد ايه ساندرا في عالم that I work with who are so disconnected from their bodies. كأنه the mind is something and the body is like a foreign alien. We need to remember, guys, that the mind and body are interconnected. What we feel, what we think is going to be expressed in this vessel, in this machine that we have. So if we're feeling stressed, guess what? You're going to find yourself feeling uptight. The tension's going to be in your shoulders. You're going to feel a knot in your stomach. يمكن تحسوا باللعيان, يمكن تحسوا بوجع راس. Do not underestimate the body's signals. Listen to your body. I cannot stress this, any further. Name what you are feeling. Notice the patterns in your feelings and why you are feeling this way. يمكن تلاقوا إنه every Tuesday at 5 p.m., your mood switches to like a pissy mood, and you're like, okay, why am I all of a sudden irritated every Tuesday at 5 p.m.? So notice the patterns. Notice if there's a trend. Is it after you talk to someone, after a specific situation, that you notice a change in your mood or your energy levels? What is your body trying to tell you? Think about what's helpful and what's unhelpful to you. So long story short, we want to develop more self-awareness, become the observers in our life, notice what is going on around you. Don't just be like in, this autopilot mode. What else is there on that topic? I think that was the only thing I wanted to talk about in self-awareness. Is بتذكر شيء تاني, I'll probably say it later. Moving on to the other point, we want to be more accepting of ourselves. So to be more accepting of ourselves, we need to allow ourselves and other people to be imperfect. Making mistakes is a normal part of life. This is how we're built. Keep going, even if you don't get things right the first time. That's okay. We're all prone to making those mistakes. Try to be less critical. And in other words, try to be more compassionate. Compassionate is this idea of كيف أنا بقدر أكون kind, gentle, understanding مع حالي. Think of how you would talk to your best friend or someone that you really, really care for. Think of a family member. You probably show them already without knowing so much compassion, so much empathy, so much understanding. Imagine if you gave yourself a fraction of that kindness that you give to other people. That's the stuff I'm talking about. That's self-compassion. So think of how you can reflect all that positive energy and kindness that you share with others to giving it a bit to yourself. يعني after all, we tend to be our own worst enemies. كتير بنكون قاسيين على حالنا. And sometimes this doesn't help. It just makes us feel more stuck. It's like we're bullying ourselves, if you want. Another point that we talked a lot about is learning to strengthen our flexible thinking. To strengthen our flexible thinking, we need to think of positive ways of thinking, think more objectively or rationally, think about how we can adjust the way that we see things. A person that has these types of skills usually develops it through experiences. كمان حدا ذكر هيدا الشيء إنه life experiences كمان teach us to become resilient. And it's true. That's why we see إنه with age, normally, resilience goes up. So definitely find ways to look at things differently, challenge the perspective that you have adopted. Sometimes الاشياء اللي بتخلينا stuck هي our ego, our fixed belief, our expectations, and our habits. هول they keep us stuck and they lead us to resist the change, if you will. Another point is find meaning in what you do and in your life. People who are resilient don't just have jobs, but they have a calling, they have a purpose, they have a meaning. To find meaning in life, I sometimes tell people to think of three things. What brings you pleasure? What gives you a sense of meaning or purpose? And what also helps you to feel engaged in the community. Those are three things that if you can identify, بيخلوا الواحد يحس بquality of life, that's much better. So purpose, what's the meaning, engagement, and what are things that bring you pleasure. So again,
على النقطة، يعني شفنا كتير تشديد على النقطة كمان نيكول، خصوصي بعد كوفيد. يعني there's a shift in careers, in people slowing down, and really questioning purpose, the quality of our life. حسينا حتى العالم كله صار أكتر عم بيضوي على هالنقاط اللي حكيتي فيها. إنه
Absolutely, Sandra. To be honest, I'm one of those people as well that, following COVID or during that time, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I a workaholic? What is happening here? And I learned to slow down. I reassessed my values and my priorities because I felt like something was incongruent. Often إذا عنا value معينة, but our actions are not in alignment مع هيدي الvalue, بيصير في incongruence. So example, if I value health and fitness, but all I do is eat McDonald's every day, حيكون في incongruence, في misalignment. بينما if I know this is what I value and I take actions in accordance بهالvalue, هون we have the perfect puzzle. بركبوا على بعض. So that was one thing I realized. I realized that my priorities shifted and I needed to change my actions to be more congruent with those values. And so, like you said, for so many people, COVID was a time for us to go, what really matters? What do I want out of this?
So هون حكيتينا شوي نيكول، عم تحكينا شوي يمكن ما بعرف إذا نسأل السؤال إنه it's high level things in our perspective of life and how to think of our life وهيك. What are things we do daily يمكن شيء بالروتين تبعنا بيصير بيخلينا كمان to acquire these skills.
So this idea of self-soothing and slowing down, this looks differently for everyone. For some people, this idea is, I'm going to have a bubble bath, I'm going to have a shower, I'm going to get on the phone and talk to my mom. Whatever it is, it's about slowing down and doing things to attend to your needs, to attend to your needs outside of your obligations and your duties. And a lot of people, whether they are students or whether they are workers or employees, sometimes over-identify with those roles. When I say over-identify, meaning بينسوا حالهم إنه هن عندهم غير أدوار بالحياة. So الموظف ممكن يروح على الشغل، يرجع على البيت، صارت الساعة 5 أو 6 بس بعده براسه عم بيفكر بدي ابعت هالإيميل لازم ظبط هيدا الباوربوينت So essentially you didn't turn off, you didn't switch off the mind, you're still operating under working mode. So we need to find a way to unplug from certain roles and step into the other roles. So again, this idea of let's be flexible, let's move into our different roles. I'll be mom when I'm at home, I'll be boss when I'm at work, I'll be a sister when I'm sitting with my sister, I'll be whatever. Again, being in those different roles, that's also part of self-care. So last point I wanted to talk about is building strong interpersonal relationships. So again, on the same sort of note that we're talking about, is surround yourself with people that are supportive. You will only know who's supportive. You're probably surrounded by so many people, but in your mind view, this person is more supportive than this person for whatever reason. Yumkin one person offers a lot of unsolicited advice. Maybe the other person doesn't really listen to you as much as you would like. Whatever those reasons, who are the people that offer you that strength and support. Be sure to make time to spend time with them, because they are the people that can help you in times of need and they can help you to evolve. So final thoughts, موضوع self-care is non-negotiable. So we should all just sign a contract with ourselves that we need to have self-care incorporated into our daily life. هيدا شيء مش luxury إنه over the weekend I'll have time for self-care. Doesn't work that way, guys. It's a daily thing. You need to find ways to look after yourself. When you operate in this state of being, meaning practicing resilience, building that resilience repertoire, we start living from a place where we are thriving. We're no longer kind of in survival mode. So I really like this idea of resilience being tied to thriving, being tied to actually the first image that I showed today. Does anyone remember شو كانت أول صورة فرجيتها cultivating resilience? It was a plant. حطيت صورة a plant for a reason, because we evolve, we grow, and we can do that if we put just the right ingredients with the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, the right soil, we grow. That's how we got to take care of ourselves. Self-care. And lastly here, I'm not sure again how I see this. I was debating whether I want to leave that in there or not. So sometimes we can think of life as having two options. We either accept defeat or rise above it, or we transform our pain into possibility. حسيت هيدي كتير simplistic view, so I don't want it to be undermining or invalidating people's experiences. I do acknowledge that there's all of the gray area in between, and again, life happens. So if that doesn't resonate for you, that's totally fine. آخر شغلة I wanted to recommend 2 books. So for people that are interested in this topic أكتر, those are books that I've read myself and that I would suggest are, you know, pretty good reads على هيدا التوبيك. So واحدة is Emotional Resilience, How to Safeguard Your Mental Health. هيدا الكتاب كتير بيركز على CBT approach. So CBT meaning a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. It talks about our cognition, the way we think, perception, how we analyze and evaluate things, and thirdly, our behavior, how we react to things, what we do about it. Very simple, easy read. Another one that talks about emotional resilience, amongst other things, is
حلو.
emotional agility. شو
I read
هو؟
I read the second one. It's very nice.
Oh, nice. What did you think of it?
It's really nice. Very simple وهيك أشياء you can do practical things that you can do. يعني أشياء واحد إنه بيقدر دغري يبلش ويغير.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I found. These books are super straightforward, easy to read. You know, you don't have to read the book from, you know, cover to cover. You can leave it sometimes on your bedside and come back to it later. It's fun. And that's it. I will leave it at that. And يمكن هلا فينا إذا بدك ساندرا بعتقد ننقل لأنه I think I went a little bit over time. بدي أعطي مجال للعالم يسألوا أسئلة. So maybe we move to the other room.
No, we're fine. We're fine on time.
Oh,
Don't
are
worry.
we? Oh, okay. I was like rushing through it. Like, sorry, because قلنا شي 40 minutes حسيت حالي over time. Yeah.
نحن سألنا كمان أسئلة. دكتور نيكول كمان هيك مثل إذا بدك يعني حكيتي عن هيك the takeaway message ومثل إيش نعملها. أنا بس بدي نسأل آخر سؤال قبل ما ننقل على الروم للناس يلي حوالينا. إذا نحن we have people around us who are not emotionally resilient. كيف فينا نقنعهم إنه it's time to change أو إذا ما تغيرنا رح يصير في كيف فينا نوصل هالمسج
Yeah, that's usually the struggle, isn't it? You know, a lot of people come into therapy because of problems with people who refuse to go into therapy. So, so it's very difficult. You know, let me start with that. The most that we can do, Sandra, is to offer them education, meaning منفرجيهم article, منفرجيهم video. هيك subtly try to introduce these concepts to them. بعد ما يحضروها دخلكم شو رأيكم فيها? What did you think about that? Create moments where there are times to talk about it and to discuss it. لما نجي لشخص kind of بطريقة إنه عم نهجم عليه أو عم نأمره أو جايين من فوق, we lost there. You know, we're going to find a lot of resistance. People are going to feel like we are offering unsolicited advice. And another takeaway maybe from today's talk is sometimes unsolicited advice is seen as criticism. They're probably not asking to change. They see absolutely nothing wrong. So if we're coming to them being like, hey, have you heard about emotional resilience? It's going to sound like we're saying you need to change. And they're not going to like the sound of that. You know, none of us like to be told what to do. It's just the way we're built, right? So I would approach it gently to have conversations, share a video, share an article. What do you think about it? تعرفي حدا بالحياة هيك. Oh, really? Why are they like that? Introduce the concepts gently. Try to model that behavior. If we model it, they might be encouraged to do the same. All that we really can do is control how we respond to situations. I know it's very frustrating because you probably really care about certain people and you want what's best for them. You want them to learn certain skills. You want them to see a professional. You know that this would be great for them, but there's a resistance there. There's a reluctance, and we can't push so hard. If we push so hard, they will become more and more distant from us. So we really need to be careful.
and maybe model. يمكن إذا نحن بنطبق هالأشياء ونحن بنكون منيح ونقدر نحكي خبرة يمكن هيك بتساعد كمان على الناس يلي they are. alright, so رح ننقل على الروم مثل ما قلنا. So to continue our discussions بيهمنا كتير نحكي معك يعني أكتر نفوت بأكتر cases شفتيها. يمكن نحكي أكتر خبرات الناس يلي معنا. بنرجع نذكر إنه بالروم it's a safe space. ما بنكون عم نسجل. People can interact معك, يسألوك أسئلة. They can raise their hand. فيهم حتى يسمعوا, فيهم يسألوا أسئلتهم anonymously مثل ما عم نعمل هلأ. بيهمنا نحكي أكتر. نحكي أكتر يمكن معك when this can fail. يعني نقدر نساعد الناس وين نقاط الضعف هالتبس اللي اعطيتينا اياها، وين ما بتزبط معنا، وين نحن بحاجه، وامتين لازم نروح نحكي مع اخصائي يعني when we cannot do it alone or when we need help. so هيدول المواضيع يلي we will discuss them further. انا بس رح فرجي just share screen بس للناس تعرف كمان how do we move للي اول مره. قدامكم على الاب ببين عندكم can you hear me؟
Yep.
اوكي. قدامكم على الاب ببين عندكم على المنيو رومز، اوكي، محل ما هلا في كيرسر. ببين عندكم رومز، بتكبسوا على رومز ورح تشوفوا اوضه واحده نحن خلقناها هلا. هيدي الاوضه بتختفي من بعد ما نخلص الدiscussion تبعنا مع دكتور نيكول. اسمها How to become more emotionally resilient. رح نفوت، رح نبلش الاوضه انا ودكتور نيكول. Please move with us to the room. خلينا نكفي discussion. safe space فيكم تشاركونا. وانتم عم تنقلوا رح يبين عندكم سيرفي صغير بده literally less than a minute. بس اعطونا رأيكم بالسيشن، بتساعدونا وبنقدر هيك ناخد الفيدباك تبعكم ونتحسن أكتر. عبولنا السيرفي ب 30 ثانية ونحن ناطرينكم in the room تنكفي الحديث ونسأل أكتر أسئلة لدكتور نيكول على كيف فينا نحسن ونشتغل على حالنا، وهالكوبينج ميكانيزم وكوبينج تيبس اللي عطتنا إياهم كمان نطبقهم بطريقة منيحة. Thank you so much Dr. Nicole. I'll stop the recording and we'll move together to the room. Thank you so
Sounds.
much.
See you.